The reception was everything my ex-wife ever wanted it to be. White lights draped across the ceiling like a soft constellation, a string quartet near the windows, and a room full of people dressed like they belonged in her new life. I stood near the edge of it all, not because I was trying to lurk, but because that's where you stand when you're the person nobody expects to see. In my left hand I held a folded wedding program. In my right, a small envelope. Plain, unmarked, sealed. Not a gift, not a threat, just paperwork I'd promised myself I'd bring, because I'd learned that, trust me, is how you end up regretting things later. I wasn't there to toast her. I was there because my 8-year-old son was the ring bearer, and the custody agreement said exchanges would happen, without conflict. My ex had made that clause sound like she was being mature. In reality, it meant I had to show up and smile while she performed happiness for a room full of people who only knew her version of our story. Emma, my ex-wife, was radiant in lace and champagne-colored heels. Her new husband, Caleb, stood beside her, arm around her waist like he'd won something. They were doing rounds, accepting congratulations, laughing at the right moments, looking like the ending of a movie. When Emma's eyes finally landed on me, her smile didn't fade, but it tightened, just slightly, like she didn't love that I existed in the same frame. I gave a small nod, nothing more. I'd promised myself I wouldn't make a scene. Then, from behind me, a man with gray hair and a careful, professional posture stepped forward. He wasn't dressed like family. He looked like someone who attends events because his job requires it, someone used to reading rooms and saying things precisely. He waited until Emma turned toward him, then spoke quietly. "Emma," he said almost politely, "you know he never signed the waiver, right?" Her face changed instantly. Color drained from her cheeks so fast it was like the lights had shifted. Her lips parted but no sound came out. Caleb's arm tightened around her waist. "What waiver?" he asked, smiling at first, until he saw Emma's expression and realized this wasn't small talk. The air around us thickened. A few nearby guests stopped mid-laugh. A champagne flute froze halfway to someone's mouth. Emma swallowed hard, eyes snapping to me, wide and sharp with a kind of fear I hadn't seen since the day I caught her lying. She thought this day proved she won. One sentence proved she'd miscalculated. I didn't smile, I didn't speak. Because I hadn't planned revenge. I'd just come prepared. To understand why I was even in that room, you need to know how our divorce really happened. My name is Michael Reed, and this is the story of how my ex-wife's perfect wedding collapsed without me lifting a finger. Because the truth has a way of showing up, even when you're trying to bury it under flowers and vows. Emma and I were married for 9 years. We met in our mid-20s, built a life that looked solid from the outside, and had one son together, Noah. By the time we divorced, I was 36 and she was 34. The papers were finalized a little over a year before that reception, and by then, Emma had already introduced Caleb to half our social circle like he'd been waiting in the wings the whole time. If you asked Emma, the divorce was mutual. She told everyone the same clean story. We grew apart. Michael didn't support my goals. I needed to be with someone who believed in me. Sometimes she went softer, like she was trying to sound fair, as a good dad. But he was holding me back. And in the beginning, I almost let myself believe her. Because it was easier than believing the alternative, that she'd been rewriting our marriage while I was still living in it. But the reality was messier. There was a coworker who became a late-night texting habit, then a friend who suddenly appeared at every event, then gaslighting so smooth I started questioning my own instincts. When I finally confronted her, she didn't deny the feelings. She just framed it like it was my fault for noticing too late. And once she decided the marriage was over, she moved fast. Too fast. She pushed for a rushed settlement, insisted on specific clauses, and acted like every question I asked was me, making it difficult. At the time, I thought she wanted out. Now I know she wanted control. The first red flag wasn't dramatic. It was small, almost laughable. Emma turning her phone face down every time I walked into the room. At first I told myself I was being paranoid. Everyone scrolls, everyone texts, people deserve privacy, but privacy doesn't make you flinch. Emma started staying late at work for a big project. Then the late nights turned into weekend strategy sessions. She'd come home buzzing, not tired, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. When I asked how her day was, she'd answer in vague chunks, then pivot quickly to Noah's homework or what we were eating for dinner. And when I asked about the new name popping up on her screen, Caleb, she smiled like I was being ridiculous. He's just a coworker, she said. You're reading into it. The more I asked, the calmer she became. The calmer she became, the crazier I felt. I suggested counseling, not as a threat, because I still believed marriages can be saved if both people want to save them. Emma laughed. Counseling? She repeated. Michael, we don't need therapy. We need you to stop being insecure. That sentence was a turning point. It wasn't just dismissal, it was strategy. If she labeled my instincts insecurity, then anything I noticed could be framed as my flaw. A month later, I came home early from work with takeout, expecting to surprise her. I surprised myself instead. Emma was in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, smiling softly. Not a work smile, a private one. When she heard the door, she turned sharply and ended the call. Too fast. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just said, Emma, who is that? Her shoulders dropped like she was tired of pretending. Someone who listens, she said. Someone who makes me feel seen. A shock hit first, then grief, heavy and sudden, like your chest gets filled with wet sand, then a strange clarity. Because once someone admits the truth, you stop chasing shadows. 2 days later, she demanded divorce terms, and a week after that, Caleb appeared publicly. At a friend's party, standing beside her like he'd always belonged there. She didn't just leave. She rewrote our history to make herself look innocent. Emma didn't want a divorce. She wanted a transaction. Within a week of telling me she had feelings, she had a spreadsheet of demands. Not emotional demands, logistical ones, dates, percentages, deadlines, like she'd rehearsed the script with someone else. We can do this clean, she said, eyes bright with that calm determination she used when she wanted things her way. No dragging it out, no turning it into a war. That sounded reasonable. Until I realized what clean meant to her. She insisted we use one mediator she trusted. She pushed hard for me not to involve a lawyer. Oh, lest it gets ugly. She wanted the house listed immediately, even though the market was slow and selling fast meant selling cheap. And then she slid a document across the table that made my stomach tighten. A waiver. It's standard, she said quickly. Just a release so the sale and accounts can move smoothly. It's administrative. Administrative is another word people use when they want you to stop asking questions. I asked what it covered. Emma sighed like I was exhausting her. Michael, please don't do this. Caleb says. She stopped herself, then corrected quickly. My advisor says this is normal. There it was. Proof that someone else was in the room, even when he wasn't physically there. A friend of mine from college, John, had become an attorney. I sent him a photo of the waiver and asked one simple question. Does this look normal? He called me immediately. Don't sign anything you don't understand, he said. And don't let her rush you. Rushing is how people hide things. I didn't sign it that day. I asked for time, and Emma's patience cracked. You're doing this to punish me, she snapped. No, I said quietly. I'm doing it to protect myself. In the end, I did agree to a quick settlement because I wanted peace for Noah and I wanted the bleeding to stop, but I kept copies of everything: emails, drafts, texts, dates. After the divorce finalized, I noticed something small at first, an account that didn't match what I remembered, a transfer I couldn't explain. Not enough to scream fraud, but enough to make me pause, enough to make me realize the story Emma told about clean didn't feel clean at all. I didn't chase revenge. I chased the truth. Quietly. After the papers were signed, I did what people tell you to do after a divorce. Move on. I rented a 2-bedroom apartment 10 minutes from Noah's school so custody exchanges wouldn't become another battleground. I bought furniture that didn't remind me of our old house. I learned how to cook meals Noah actually ate. I started running in the mornings because if I didn't burn off the anger, it would sit in my chest all day like a weight. I also started therapy. Not because I wanted to sit in a room and relive my worst moments, but because I didn't want Emma's choices to turn me into a bitter man. I wanted Noah to have a father who was stable, not suspicious of everyone. From a distance, Emma seemed to be thriving. Her social media became a highlight reel: weekend getaways, new outfits, Caleb's arm around her waist in every photo like a stamp of ownership. The captions were always about choosing happiness and finally being understood. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I didn't participate, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something in the divorce hadn't been honest. Then, 8 months after the final decree, a thick envelope showed up in my mailbox. Cream-colored paper, embossed lettering, an invitation, Emma and Caleb wedding date, venue dress code, and one line that felt less like information and more like a challenge. First, Noah will be participating in the ceremony. When I saw the invitation, I realized it wasn't about celebrating love, it was about proving a point. I didn't want to go. I want that to be clear. If Noah hadn't been involved, I would have stayed home, ordered pizza, and let Emma have her performance without me in the audience. But Noah was 8, and he was proud. He'd come back from Emma's place talking about his special job at the wedding like it made him important. Ring bearer, suit fitting, practicing walking down the aisle. He didn't see betrayal or manipulation. He saw a day where adults were smiling and he got to be part of it. And I wasn't going to punish my son for his mother's choices. So I agreed to show up for one reason, Noah. I told Emma in writing, through our co-parenting app, that I would attend only for the ceremony and the immediate family photos that included Noah. No speeches, no lingering, no alcohol, no scenes. She replied with a thumbs up emoji like it was casual. That should have been my first hint the invitation wasn't about peace. It was about optics. It was about showing everyone, look, even my ex is here. I'm the mature one. At the morning of the wedding, I packed an envelope into my jacket pocket. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a gift. It was copies, custody documents, the waiver Emma had tried to rush me into signing, and a printed timeline of transfers I still couldn't fully explain, just in case. Because I'd learned something after divorce: when someone lies with a smile, you don't walk into their world without a backup plan. I walked into the venue expecting awkward smiles, forced politeness, and a clean exit. I didn't expect a stranger to recognize my name. The venue was a renovated estate outside the city, white stone, trimmed hedges, a long gravel drive lined with lanterns. It looked like the kind of place people choose when they want their happiness to look expensive. Inside, everything was soft and curated. Cream linens, pale flowers, candles that smelled like vanilla and money. Guests moved in clusters, speaking in low voices the way people do when they want to sound important. Noah found me immediately in his little suit, eyes bright. "Dai," he said, grabbing my hand. "Look, I'm the ring guy!" I crouched and straightened his tie. "You look sharp." I told him, and I meant it. "You're going to do great." Then I stood, and my eyes landed on Emma. She was near the front, glowing in a fitted dress, hair pinned perfectly, smiling like she'd rehearsed it in a mirror until it looked effortless. Caleb stood beside her in a tailored tux, jaw set, chin slightly raised. The posture of a man who believes he's upgraded. When Emma saw me, she walked over with that same polished smile, but her eyes were sharper than her mouth. "Michael," she said, as if we were coworkers who'd once worked well together. "I'm glad you came." "For Noah." "Of course," I replied. She leaned in slightly, voice sweet. "See," she whispered. "Everything worked out. We're all happier now." It wasn't comfort, it was a quiet flex. Behind her, a few guests glanced my way, then looked away quickly, some with pity, some with judgment, like they'd already decided which story they believed. I caught snippets as I passed. "That's the ex. Wow, he actually showed up. Good for her." Moving on. I kept my face neutral and focused on Noah. Humiliation only works if you accept the role you're being handed. I didn't. That's when I noticed an older man near the edge of the room. Silver hair, clean suit, posture like he'd spent a lifetime in offices where words mattered. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't chatting. He was watching, not Emma, me. His gaze followed me like he recognized something, like my name meant more than the ex. Then he moved closer, stepping into my space with the calm certainty of someone who didn't need permission. He looked past me toward Emma, and when he said her name, it sounded like it tasted wrong. "Emma," he said quietly. "We need to talk." The man didn't look like a guest who came for cake and dancing. He looked like someone who came because he had to. Emma turned toward him with her wedding smile already in place. "Hi, sorry, do I know you?" He didn't smile back. "My name is Warren Blake," he said evenly. "I'm with Northbridge Financial. I was assigned to the account your divorce proceeds moved through." The air around Emma shifted. Her shoulders stiffened, just slightly. Caleb's grin stayed on his face for half a second longer. until he registered Emma's reaction and realized this wasn't a congratulatory introduction. Warren continued, voice low but clear. I didn't come to celebrate, he said. I came because your name came up again this week. And Emma's smile faltered. I don't understand. Warren's eyes flicked briefly toward me, like he was confirming who I was. Then back to Emma. You know he never signed the waiver, right? He asked. It wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. Emma's face drained of color so fast it was like someone pulled a plug. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Caleb tightened his arm around her waist. What waiver? He asked, laughter still in his voice, until he saw Emma's eyes. Warren didn't raise his tone. The waiver authorizing the release and transfer of funds from the restricted escrow account, he said. The one your mediator's office submitted with his name attached. Emma swallowed hard. There must be a mistake. Warren's expression didn't change. There's no mistake, he said. There's a signature discrepancy. The account flagged it. That's why it landed on my desk. Around us, a few guests slowed mid-conversation, sensing tension. Someone's laugh died off. A bridesmaid glanced over confused. Emma's hands clenched around her bouquet as if the flowers could keep her upright. Warren, she whispered, suddenly familiar with his name now that she was afraid. This is not the time. He leaned in slightly. Then you shouldn't have scheduled a wire transfer this week, he said. Not with a waiver that doesn't match the beneficiary's signature. Caleb's face had changed completely. Emma, he said, low and sharp. What is he talking about? Emma looked at me. Fast, desperate, like I was the only person who could stop what was happening. Her eyes begged without words. Don't do this here. I didn't speak. Because I hadn't done anything. Warren held a business card between two fingers. If you'd like, he said calmly, I can step outside and call the compliance officer right now. Or your attorney. But I'm telling you this as a courtesy before it becomes public record. Emma's throat bobbed as she swallowed. Her wedding smile was gone now, replaced by something raw and pale. I didn't enjoy her fear. I enjoyed the truth finally having a voice. For a few seconds, Emma tried to do what she always did when reality got uncomfortable, smooth it over with charm. She forced a laugh that sounded thin. This is ridiculous, she said, glancing around at the nearby guests who had started paying attention. Warren, you must have me confused with someone else. Today is my wedding. Warren didn't blink. I'm not confused, he replied. And your wedding doesn't pause compliance. That line landed like a crack through glass. Caleb's expression tightened, and I saw a new emotion slide behind his eyes. Fear, not for Emma's feelings, for himself. Are you saying she forged something? He asked, voice low, the smile completely gone. Emma's head snapped toward him. No, she hissed. Of course not. But the way she said it wasn't convincing, it was desperate. Two guests nearby leaned closer, trying to catch the words. A bridesmaid's eyebrows lifted. Someone whispered, "What's happening?" And the whisper traveled fast, the way bad news always does at a happy event. Emma's mother appeared, sensing a problem. "Emma," she asked sharply, "what is this?" Emma's face stayed pale, eyes darting like she was looking for an exit. Warren held his ground. "There's a restricted escrow account connected to the divorce proceeds," he said. A waiver was submitted. The signature doesn't match Mr. Reed's verified signature on file. That's why it's flagged. The room around us felt smaller. The music kept playing, but it sounded wrong, like it belonged to a different world. I finally spoke, only because Caleb's gaze snapped to me like I was the one holding a knife. "I didn't plan this," I said evenly. "I came for my son." Emma grabbed my arm then hard, and pulled me a few steps away from the cluster forming around Warren. Her nails dug into my sleeve. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "What do you want?" she demanded, eyes wide and frantic. "Tell me what you want, Michael." For the first time in years, she wasn't controlling the narrative, she was begging to know it. I looked down at Emma's hand gripping my sleeve and gently peeled her fingers away, one at a time. Not dramatic, not cruel, just firm. "Let go," I said quietly. She did, slowly, like she didn't know what to do without control. "What do you want?" she repeated, voice shaking now. "I want Noah protected," I said. "And I want everything handled the right way." Her mouth opened, and for a second I thought she was going to cry or scream. Then she swallowed it back and tried another strategy. Michael, please, she whispered. Not today. You picked today. I replied, still calm. You've been playing with paperwork like it's a toy. Behind us, Warren was already speaking into his phone, stepping away from the crowd with the posture of someone used to making unpleasant calls. I didn't hear every word, but I caught enough. Compliance flagged signature, need preservation yes, freeze pending review. Emma heard it too. Her eyes widened. Caleb appeared beside her, face tight. Emma, he said low and furious, tell me the truth. Right now. Emma flinched like he'd struck her with a word. I didn't stay to watch them implode. That wasn't my job. My job was my son. I walked straight to Noah's table, crouched beside him, and kept my voice light. Hey, buddy, I said, you did great. I'm going to take you outside for a bit. Okay, just some air. Noah nodded, confused but trusting. As we walked away, my phone buzzed. A message from my attorney, John, who I'd updated earlier that week when the transfer discrepancy first surfaced. Asked John Asht, if anything happens today, don't discuss it with her. Tell everyone counsel only. We'll file Monday. Preserve everything. I texted back one word, is it understood, then I turned off my notifications. Emma's world was about to get very official, very fast. She wanted a fairy tale ending. Instead, she got paperwork. By the time I got Noah into the car and buckled him in, the wedding inside was already collapsing in slow motion. I didn't see the full blow up, but I didn't need to. The messages started coming before I even left the parking lot. Missed calls, texts, and finally a voicemail from Emma that sounded like she was trying to keep her voice steady while her world shook. Michael, she snapped. What did you do? Like I'd planted Warren in the crowd myself. By the time we got back to my apartment, the calls were nonstop. Emma, her mother, a number I didn't recognize that I assumed was Caleb. Then Emma again. I didn't answer. I sent one message through the co-parenting app, short, factual, child-focused. Ask Noah is with me and safe. Communication only through attorneys about any financial legal issue. Sang an hour later, Emma texted from a new number. Ask Emma, you ruined my wedding. You couldn't stand seeing me happy. I stared at it for a moment, then typed the only truth that mattered. Says Michael too, your choices did that? Not me. The next week moved fast. Warren's courtesy became a formal compliance process. The escrow account was frozen pending review. The mediator's office was contacted. Records were preserved. My attorney filed a motion to reopen part of the settlement based on the signature discrepancy and unexplained transfers. Emma tried to paint it as a misunderstanding. Then she tried to paint it as my revenge. Then she tried to threaten me with court, until her own lawyer told her to stop putting things in writing. Caleb, meanwhile, stopped being a smiling groom. I heard through mutual friends that he moved out within 2 weeks. Whether it was fear of being tied to financial fraud, or the sudden realization that Emma's clean story was built on manipulation, I don't know. What I do know is this: when someone will forge a signature to get what they want, they're not just dishonest, they're dangerous. The legal process didn't end with fireworks. It ended with corrections, accountability, numbers going back where they belonged, and a settlement revision that protected Noah's interests the way it should have from the beginning. Emma never apologized. Not really. But I didn't need her apology to move forward. I didn't want to win. I wanted to heal. And healing doesn't require the other person to admit they were wrong. It requires you to stop letting their version of reality control yours. Months later, I realized the best part wasn't watching her panic. It was realizing I was finally free. Here's the lesson I took from that day. One I wish I'd learned sooner: a lie can hold up a new life for a while. It can prop up a relationship, a reputation, even a wedding. But lies are expensive. Eventually someone pays, and sooner or later the truth shows up like it always does, quiet, undeniable, and perfectly timed. I didn't go to Emma's wedding to punish her. I went for my son. I went with dignity. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't attack her in public. I didn't even argue. I just didn't protect her from consequences she'd been postponing. Because that's what quiet power looks like. Letting reality do what reality always does when you stop covering for someone. She tried to start over by rewriting me out. The truth wrote itself back in. So I'm curious. Would you attend your ex's wedding if you were invited, or if your child was involved? Why or why not? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them, and they help other people who are navigating divorce and co-parenting too. If you want more stories about betrayal, justice, and the calm strength of boundaries, subscribe and stick around. The loudest revenge is sometimes just showing up, with nothing but the truth on your side.